with Time for All Ages. Beth Kiefer is going to be doing her part today. Last week, Beth was service leader, and I had to do Time for All Ages. This week, I'm service leader, and Beth's doing Time for All Ages. So, Beth, would you take it away? You're muted still, Beth.
I thought I was going to be muted permanently because I couldn't get connected for 25 minutes. I don't know. I need a father around here to just operate all the stuff that I don't understand. Anyway, I'm going to start with I have 10 questions, but I've narrowed it to 3. And then I'm going to recite a poem that spoke to me about fathers, because we have to do, after we tax their brains on these, I have to give them tribute too. All right, first question, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds before I give you the answer. Presidents George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush were the second father and son pair to become presidents of the United States. Who were the first? William Harrison and Benjamin Harrison, Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin D. Roosevelt, Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson, John Adams and John Quincy Adams. We got it? Of course, John Adams and John Quincy Adams. John was the second president and John Quincy was the 6th. And Theodore and Franklin were barely cousins. And Andrew Johnson and Lyndon didn't even live in the same century, I don't think. And the next one's a Bible question. All right, guys. I know Reverend Michael will get this, but I don't know about anybody else. In the Bible, whose father was prepared to sacrifice his son at an altar? David, Abel, Joseph, Isaac. Martha had her hand up and took it down. Oh, the answer is Isaac. God told Isaac's father, Abraham, to sacrifice his son at an altar. And he did. Okay, I'm going to stump you with this last one. What type of animal species has fathers who give birth to their young? Kangaroos, seahorses, toads, or spiders? Evelyn knows. Martha knows. I got a lot of open mouths. Marianne knows. It's seahorses. Female seahorses lay their eggs in a wide pouch on the male, and he swims around and carries them until the eggs hatch. And there is a devoted father. But I have news for the person who wrote this quiz. There's another relation to a seahorse that does that, and that's a sea dragon. And they're from Australia. And one of the kinds of sea dragons does the same thing, but he carries them all over his body until they hatch. Now, there are devoted fathers. All right, now for the poem. This poem really spoke to me because it just did. There's parts of it that are very close to my heart. The title is My Dad, and it's by a person named Vicky Fry, and it was posted on the internet. If I could write a story, it would be the greatest ever told. I'd write about my daddy, for he had a heart of gold. My dad, he was no hero known around the world, but he was everything to me, for I was his baby girl. I'd write about the lessons he taught me right from wrong. He instilled in me the values that one day I'd be strong. He taught me to face my fears, take each day as it comes. For things that we cannot change, he would say, what's done is done. He would say, hold your head up high, carry yourself with pride. Thanks to him, I'm somebody. and I'll never run and hide. If I could write a story, it would be the greatest ever told. I'd write about my daddy, for he had a heart of gold. And that was my daddy. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. That was lovely. Okay, it's time now for our interlude and offering. We have several ways that you can make a donation during the musical interlude. You can go to the website, there's a donation button right at the very top. You can also send a check anytime during the month. I've been doing that and I find it very easy. When I send in my pledge each month, I also send in the money for the Sundays. And then I don't have to be concerned each Sunday about it. But at any rate, um, the offering, during the interlude and offering, we will be hearing water music by George Handel, Frederick Handel. Thank you. All right, then. It's time for me to introduce our speaker for this morning, and that would be the Reverend Michael Richards. He has been an ordained pastor for 26 years and has served communities of faith for over 60 years in various capacities, both here in the US and also in the UK. He retired from full time ministry in 2019 and moved to Florida in the fall of that year and has been attending our congregation since 2020 and has been a part of a covenant group that was formed at the beginning of the pandemic. We've also heard Reverend Richards one other time, so I would like to welcome back the Reverend Michael Richards.
Yeah, works better if I unmute myself. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you this morning. Today we know is a special day. It's a time when we remember fathers. So to all of those out there, happy Father's Day. It's a day set aside to remember those who are our biological fathers, our adoptive fathers, or father-like persons who have come into our lives either through remarriage or perhaps, as in my case, through a person who took me under his wing and taught me many things, including my great love of photography. Some fathers I also know were not loving and kind, and for those, we lift them up in prayer, maybe not knowing what demons they are or they were dealing with. And so we ask for healing for them and for us. So this is the day that we honor fathers. And I thought it'd be interesting to share with you, if you didn't know, how Father's Day began. In 1910, there was a lady named Sonora Dodd in Spokane, Washington. And she was sitting in a church service on Mother's Day. She was listening to a sermon about mothers. Her mind transferred from mothers to father. Her father was a Civil War veteran. Her mama died early in life. And so all of the years that she was growing up and the years of her siblings growing up, they'd been brought up by their father. He was a very devout and godly man. And she thought that it would be a really wonderful thing to have a special day to honor her father and all fathers. Because she was born in the month of June, she was able to have a special day honoring them, honoring her father on the third Sunday in June in 1910 in Spokane, Washington. 56 years later, in 1966, President Lyndon Johnson signed the proclamation declaring that the third Sunday in June would be set aside as Father's Day, a day when we would recognize and honor and pay tribute to our earthly fathers. Let me read to you my first text this morning. It comes from Paul's letter to the Ephesians. It comes from chapter 5. And he says in this passage, no one abuses their own body, do they? No, they feed and pamper it. That's how Christ treats us, the church, since we are part of his body. And this is why a man leaves father and mother and cherishes his wife. No longer two, they become one flesh. This is a huge mystery. I don't pretend to understand it all. What is clearest to me is the way Christ treats the church. And this provides a good picture of how each husband is to treat his wife, loving himself in loving her, and how each wife is to honor her husband. Now, if you're at all familiar with that passage in Ephesians, you know that the part just before that, and indeed the passage I just read, has been the cause of a great deal of discussion and, if not downright anger amongst people. I believe, though, that like much of Scripture, it has been taken out of context and it has become pretext. This passage talks about mutual respect and love, not domination of one over the other. And so what I want to say is that the marriage relationship is one of mutual respect, or at least it should be. And so also the role of parenting, one of equality in the way of bringing up children within a two-parent family. And when this isn't the case, the single parent carries the weight of responsibility for both, which of course many of us know makes it very difficult. There was a German poet and painter by the name of Wilhelm Bosch, who was born on April 15th in 1832. He was born in the village of Wiesendahl near Hanover in Germany. And he coined this phrase, Vater werden ist nicht schwer, Vater sein dagegen sehr, which when you translate it means to become a father is not so difficult. On the other hand, being a father is very much so. We'll get back to more about that in a minute, but on a lighter note, let me share this little story with you about a father and his child. A pastor was looking over their congregation one Sunday morning and said, I heard a young boy who was sitting with his dad in church as the offering plate was passed around. And he turned to his dad and he said, Dad, don't pay for me, I'm under 5. We all know how we change with time as it goes by. But let me speak to fathers for just a moment. As we grow into maturity, hopefully we also grow from selfishness to selflessness. Hopefully we grow out of a focus on self to a focus on our proper role in mutual love and support of our spouses and our families. For those of you who are married, perhaps you heard words similar to this in your marriage service. God has ordered the covenant of marriage that husband and wife may give to each other companionship, help, and comfort, both in prosperity and in adversity, that he may hallow the expression of natural affections, and that children may be born and nurtured in families and trained in godliness, and that human society may stand on firm foundations. That, I suggest, is a prescription for fatherhood and also motherhood, if I've ever had a prescription written out. But I make no apologies about talking about fatherhood and manhood. We obviously need to be sensitive to the need for justice for women, but we must never lose sight of the proper role of manhood in that whole justice picture. As a member of the human race, we must do all that we can to ensure the rights and the dignity of all people is ensured. And here I have to admit, as a male member of the human race, that we have historically failed at that task. But that's another topic for another day. The other text I have chosen for today is from the Old Testament book of Micah the prophet, chapter 6, verse 8. And in Eugene Peterson's translation of the Bible called The Message, he puts it this way: but he, meaning God, already made it plain how to live, what we do, and what God is looking for in men and women. It's quite simple. Do what is fair and just to your neighbor. Be compassionate and loyal in your love. And don't take yourself too seriously. Take God seriously. Or perhaps, as we more commonly hear it, act justly, love faithfulness, and walk humbly with your God. And I think that this is a good guideline for anyone who wants to lead a good, satisfying life, both male, female, and non-binary. When we hear the word justice, I think that many of us think of the justice system, the good guys and the bad guys, crime and punishment. How can a just-minded person then show mercy? How can a just-minded person live in humility? How can a merciful person see to the fulfillment of justice? Justice, mercy, and humility, I think, are deeply interconnected, and they represent foundational basic tenets of all life. And yet they seem to be so very difficult to find in our society and culture today, as everything and everyone around us becomes more and more contentious. It's just more reason to dig deeper, I think, to how we can move from only talking about these things to faithfully carrying them out. And I think this one short verse from the book of Micah incorporates really all of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. And so, recognizing that traditional families are in the minority now, according to the New York Times, only 20% of American households consist of married couples with children. I think we must also recognize that parenting roles are also being bundled together, blended together, filling the gap our families with structures of all kinds. Dads are stepping up to the plate and taking on a myriad of roles. And I think that when they are engaged, fathers really make a difference. They may be classically married, they may be single, they may be divorced, widowed, gay, straight, adoptive, stepfather, stay-at-home dad, or the primary family provider. I think the most important thing is that they are involved. Let me share with you just a few quotes on fatherhood. Reed Markham is an American educator, and he wrote, "Being a great father is like shaving. No matter how good you shave today, you have to do it again tomorrow." And then Papa John, Pope John the 23rd, wrote these words. He said, "It is easier for a father to have children than for children to have a real father." Joseph Joubert, the French moralist, said that children need models rather than critics. And the Talmud, the central text of rabbinic Judaism, says, when you teach your son, you teach your son's son. And the last quote is from Plato, the Athenian philosopher, who wrote, "The best way of training the young is to train yourself at the same time, not to admonish them, but to be seen never doing that of which you would admonish them." And so finally, on this Father's Day, I think it's important to recognize and reward dads for being there, for actively teaching important life skills to children. It's important to their children and meaningful to dads everywhere when you say to them, "Thank you. Job well done." When any of us hear those words, it's what makes life worth living. This is your true legacy, ensuring the health and well-being of your children, whether you're a mother or a father, so that future generations will be in good stead. To be or not to be an active, involved parent, father or mother, that is the question. Amen.
Thank you, Michael. Thought-provoking as always.
Thank
And
you.
well said. Okay, we're going to extinguish the chalice now. If you'll join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And we'll be hearing as our closing music, "What a Wonderful World," performed by Louis Armstrong, one we all know.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Ooh, yeah. The
For my
colors
closing
of the
words,
rainbow,
using the words of Robert
so pretty
Kagan.
in the sky.
Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue back cold. Then, with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking, and when the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Okay, and on that note, we will end. I know that we are sticking around for the poll about when we're going back. So thanks to everyone who was here, and happy Sunday.